old. And Officer Derek Lawson had been with the Houston Police Department for 7 years when he walked into a hospital emergency bay that would destroy his career and cost the city $47 million. Old. He was 31 years old, experienced enough to know the difference between a doctor and a suspect. Old. But apparently convinced that his judgment about who belonged in a hospital was more reliable than hospital credentials, witness testimony, and common sense. Old. One Wednesday evening at Memorial Heights Medical Center, he responded to a disturbance call in the parking garage and encountered Dr. Marcus Chen, a 38-year-old cardiothoracic surgeon in full surgical scrubs, running toward the emergency entrance with his pager vibrating. Old. What Lawson did next, ignoring the scrubs, dismissing Chen's credentials, deploying his taser, old, and physically preventing Chen from reaching a patient in cardiac arrest, would become a textbook example of how racial profiling doesn't just destroy careers and reputations. Old. Sometimes it kills. A black man in his late 30s, Dr. Marcus Chen, was sprinting across the emergency bay entrance at Memorial Heights Medical Center at 6:38 p.m. Old on a Wednesday. His surgical scrubs were the standard blue of the cardiothoracic department. His ID badge swung from the lanyard around his neck. His pager had gone off 3 times in 90 seconds. The universal hospital code for a life-threatening emergency requiring immediate surgical intervention. No crime. Old. No disturbance, no threat, just a surgeon responding to save a life. Old. But Officer Derek Lawson saw him through a filter, so distorted by assumptions about who looks like a doctor that he couldn't process a black man in scrubs as anything other than a threat. Old. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared. Old. And your support helps us bring more truth to light. Memorial Heights Medical Center sits on the corner of Washington Avenue and Heights Boulevard in central Houston. Old. A massive complex of glass and steel that dominates 3 city blocks. It's a level I trauma center, the highest designation a hospital can receive. Old. The kind of facility that handles the city's most critical cases: gunshot wounds from gang violence, massive highway accidents, industrial injuries, old, and surgical emergencies that require teams of specialists working in perfect synchronization under impossible time pressure. Old. The emergency department entrance faces Washington Avenue, automated glass doors that never stop opening. Old. An ambulance bay with 4 designated spots constantly occupied, and security cameras mounted on every corner covering every angle of approach. Old. The parking garage sits adjacent to the main building. Old. A 7-story concrete structure that connects directly to the hospital through a covered walkway on the 2nd level. It was 6:38 p.m. on a Wednesday in September. Old. That transitional hour when Houston's brutal heat finally begins to break, but the humidity still clings to everything like a wet blanket. The evening shift change was underway. Nurses in colorful scrubs walked in groups toward the employee entrance, chatting about their day. Old. Doctors in white coats crossed the parking garage, heading home after 12-hour shifts. Visitors carried flowers and balloons, navigating unfamiliar hallways to find rooms. Residents and fellows rushed between departments, their faces showing the exhaustion of 80-hour work weeks. Old. The heat of Houston's summer still hung in the air, thick and oppressive, that particular Gulf Coast humidity that makes breathing feel like work. Old. Street lights were beginning to flicker on along Washington Avenue. Traffic hummed past. Life continued at its normal pace outside while inside the emergency department. Old. Monitors beeped their steady rhythms. Gurneys rolled past with patients in various states of crisis. Nurses shouted updates across the nurses' station. Old. And the controlled chaos of saving lives played out in real time every single day, every single hour. Old. Every single minute that makes the difference between life and death. Dr. Marcus Chen had been a cardiothoracic surgeon for 11 years. 11 years of training, precision, old, and life or death decisions made in operating rooms where seconds determined outcomes. He'd completed his undergraduate degree at Stanford, graduated summa cum laude in biomedical engineering, then enrolled at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, where he finished in the top 5% of his class. His residency was at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, 5 years of general surgery, learning to operate on every system in the human body. Old. Then came the fellowship, 3 years of specialized cardiothoracic surgery at the Texas Heart Institute in Houston, mastering procedures on the heart and lungs, learning to repair valves, replace arteries, and perform transplants. He'd published 17 peer-reviewed papers on minimally invasive cardiac surgery. Old. He'd presented at national conferences. He'd trained younger surgeons in techniques he'd helped develop. At 38 years old, Dr. Marcus Chen was exactly where he'd worked to be. One of the most skilled cardiothoracic surgeons in Texas, trusted with the most complex cases, called in when other surgeons said a patient couldn't be saved. His colleagues called him meticulous. His patients called him a miracle worker. His success rate on high-risk surgeries was 94%, well above the national average of 87%. That Wednesday evening, Zold Chen was finishing notes in the surgical wing when his pager went off. Code blue, emergency department, cardiac arrest, immediate surgical consultation required. Old. He was the on-call cardiothoracic surgeon. This was his responsibility. He grabbed his stethoscope, checked that his ID badge was visible, and ran. Old. He took the stairs from the 4th floor to the 1st floor. Elevators were too slow during emergencies, and burst through the stairwell door into the parking garage level. Old. The emergency department was 200 feet away across the covered walkway. His pager went off again. Then a third time, someone was dying. Every second mattered. Chen ran. Old. Officer Derek Lawson had been with the Houston Police Department for 7 years. In those 7 years, he'd compiled a record that should have ended his career long before he ever set foot in Memorial Heights Medical Center. 14 complaints, 14. 12 of them involved allegations of excessive force, racial profiling, or unlawful detention against Black and Hispanic men. 2 had been sustained. Old. Resulting in written reprimands and mandatory retraining. The other 12 had been closed with findings of insufficient evidence or policy compliance. Old. Despite witness statements, body camera footage, and incident reports that told a different story. Lawson had a pattern. He responded aggressively to situations involving people of color in spaces where he decided they didn't belong. Old. A Black teenager jogging through River Oaks at 6 a.m. Lawson stopped him, demanded ID, searched his backpack, and accused him of casing houses for burglary. Old. The teenager was training for his high school track team. A Hispanic man in a suit entering an office building downtown. Lawson detained him for 30 minutes. Old. Questioning whether he actually worked there and demanding to see his employee badge 3 separate times. The man was a senior partner at a law firm. Old. An Asian family unloading groceries from their car in West University. Lawson questioned whether they lived in the house, asked for proof of ownership. Old, and threatened to call immigration. The family had lived there for 12 years and were naturalized U.S. citizens. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive. Old. 14 complaints in 7 years. That's not bad luck. That's not mistakes. That's a pattern. But somehow Lawson remained on patrol. Old. His supervisors noted in evaluations that he was proactive but needed improvement in community relations and de-escalation techniques. So those notes never translated into meaningful consequences. No suspension, no reassignment. Old. No removal from patrol despite mounting evidence that Lawson saw people of color as suspects first and citizens second. Old. When Lawson received a call about a disturbance in the parking garage at Memorial Heights Medical Center, a report of a man acting erratically and possibly armed, his mind immediately filled in a narrative. Hospital parking garage, late evening. Dangerous area, probably a drug addict or someone looking for prescription medications. He arrived at 6:35 p.m., parking his patrol car near the entrance. He walked into the garage, scanning for someone who looked suspicious. Then he saw a doctor. Old. Marcus Chen running across the walkway toward the emergency entrance. A Black man, running. Old. Wearing what looked like casual clothes. Lawson didn't recognize surgical scrubs. In Lawson's mind, that had to be the suspect. Old. Do you think officers should face automatic termination after 5 complaints involving racial profiling or excessive force? Drop your answer below. Lawson stepped into Chen's path, one hand on his service weapon, the other raised in a stop gesture. Stop right there. Chen skidded to a halt. Old. His running shoes squeaking on the polished concrete, breathing hard from the sprint down 4 flights of stairs and across the garage. Officer, I'm Dr. Chen. I'm the on-call cardiothoracic surgeon. I have a code blue in the ED. I need to get there now. Lawson's eyes narrowed, scanning Chen from head to toe. He saw a Black man in what he thought were casual clothes, blue fabric that could be anything. Running, breathing hard, looking nervous. In Lawson's experience, people who ran from police had something to hide. Sure you are. Turn around and put your hands on the wall. Chen felt panic rising. Old. Not for himself, but for the patient dying 200 feet away. Every second of delay meant more brain damage, more cardiac muscle dying. Old. Less chance of recovery even if they got her back. Officer, please. Look at my badge. Look at my scrubs. I'm wearing hospital identification. Old. My name is embroidered right here. I was paged 3 times. Someone is in cardiac arrest. Lawson grabbed Chen's arm with his left hand. Old, his right hand still hovering near his service weapon. The grip was tight, controlling. The kind of hold designed to move someone against their will. I said, turn around. You're acting suspicious. Chen pulled his arm back instinctively. The movement automatic, defensive. Don't touch me. I'm trying to save a life. Old, I am not acting suspicious. I am wearing surgical scrubs. I am wearing a hospital ID badge with my photograph on it. Look at it. Old. That was the moment everything escalated. Lawson interpreted Chen's reflexive movement, the pulling away, the raised voice, as resistance, as defiance, as confirmation of his initial assessment. He drew his taser from its holster on his belt, the yellow plastic and black metal catching the parking garage lights. Old, get on the ground now. Hands behind your head. Chen's voice rose, desperation breaking through his professional calm. Old, the measured tone he used in operating rooms replaced by raw urgency. I am a surgeon at this hospital. I am wearing surgical scrubs. My ID badge is right here. Old, it has my name, my photograph, and my department. Call the emergency department. Call surgical services. Call anyone. Just let me do my job. There's a woman dying. Old, behind Lawson, a hospital security guard had appeared, drawn by the commotion. The guard, a former Houston police officer named Vincent Torres, immediately recognized what was happening and started moving forward. Officer, that's Dr. Chen. He's one of our surgeons. But Lawson didn't turn around. Old. He didn't call anyone. He didn't verify anything. He saw a black man refusing to comply, arguing, pulling away, and in his mind that justified the escalation of force. Old. The taser deployed with a sharp electrical crack. 50,000 volts shot through Dr. Marcus Chen's body. Old, the barbed probes embedding in his scrubs and delivering a neuromuscular incapacitation that overrode his entire nervous system. Old. He collapsed onto the concrete floor of the parking garage, his body convulsing involuntarily, muscles seizing in rigid contractions, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to reach the patient who was coding 200 feet away, unable to do anything except endure the electrical current coursing through his system. Oh, his head hit the concrete. His stethoscope clattered away. His pager fell from his waistband, still vibrating with urgent alerts. Old, this is where bias becomes impenetrable. Old. This is where assumptions override evidence so completely that a police officer deploys a taser, a pain compliance weapon that can cause cardiac arrest. Old can kill, on a man wearing surgical scrubs with a hospital ID badge clearly visible on his chest. A man who has identified himself as a doctor responding to save a life. Lawson stood over Chen, who was convulsing on the ground. Old. The taser still delivering 5-second cycles of electrical current, and reached for his handcuffs. A nurse exiting the hospital through the walkway saw what was happening and screamed, her voice cutting through the parking garage like an alarm.
That's Dr. Chen!
What are you doing? He's a surgeon! She dropped the bag she was carrying and started running toward them, her phone already out, already dialing. Lawson ignored her, his focus entirely on Chen. Old. He rolled Chen onto his stomach, Chen's muscles still twitching from the taser's effects, and wrenched his arms behind his back with unnecessary force. The handcuffs snapped on, tight, deliberately tight, the metal biting into Chen's wrists. The taser's effects were wearing off, the 5-second cycle complete. Old. But Chen's muscles were still spasming involuntarily, his breath coming in ragged gasps as his diaphragm tried to remember how to work properly. The nurse reached them, her voice shaking with fury and disbelief. Stop! You just tased a doctor! He was coming to help a patient! There's a code blue! He's the cardiothoracic surgeon on call! Lawson stood, putting his boot on Chen's back to keep him down. Mom, step back. This man was resisting arrest. Another nurse appeared from the emergency entrance. Old, then a physician assistant, then a resident, all drawn by the commotion. They stood in a semicircle, phones out, recording, witnessing. Someone called out, that's Doctor. Sold! Chen! I just saw him in the OR this morning! Another voice heated triple bypass on my patient last week! What the hell is happening? A security guard arrived. Old Vincent Torres, his radio already crackling to life. Security to officer in the parking garage. That's Dr. Chen, cardiothoracic surgery. He's on call. Old, we paged him for a code blue. Patient is critical. Lawson finally hesitated, his boot still on Chen's back, his radio squawking. Old, the security guard pointing urgently at Chen's badge, which had twisted around during the struggle, the photo and name still visible. The nurse shouting. Old, multiple witnesses with cameras. Hospital staff gathering. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind, that uncomfortable awareness that maybe, possibly, Old he'd made a catastrophic mistake. But instead of releasing Chen, instead of calling for immediate verification, Old, instead of acknowledging what was now obvious to everyone watching, Lawson doubled down. Pride and bias are a deadly combination. Old. He's under arrest for resisting an officer and disorderly conduct. Chen, still on the ground with a boot pressing into his back, managed to speak. Old, his voice hoarse but clear enough for the dozen phones recording to capture every word. Officer Lawson, badge number 4758. You just prevented a surgeon from reaching a cardiac patient. You deployed a taser on a doctor in full hospital scrubs with visible identification. Old. And someone is dying right now while you do this. Do you understand what you've done? Old, should officers be required to verify hospital credentials and status before using force in medical facilities? Let me know what you think. Old, inside the emergency department, 68-year-old Patricia Moreno was in full cardiac arrest. VFib, ventricular fibrillation, the heart's chaotic. Useless quivering that kills within minutes if not corrected. Her heart wasn't pumping, it was shaking. Electrical signals firing randomly. Old, muscle fibers contracting independently, no coordinated rhythm, no blood flow, no oxygen reaching her brain or organs. The ER team had been working on her for 4 minutes when Chen was first paged. Chest compressions. A nurse straddling the gurney, hands locked. Old, pumping at 100 compressions per minute, breaking ribs with the force needed to circulate blood. Defibrillation. The paddles charged, everyone stepping back. Moreno's body jerking, no change. Still VFib. Medications. Epinephrine pushed through the IV line. Amiodarone to try to stabilize the rhythm. Old, another shock. Another round of compressions. But Patricia Moreno had a complex cardiac history that made this code different, more dangerous, more time, critical. 3 previous heart attacks over 12 years, each one damaging more heart muscle, weakening the pump. 2 stents placed in her coronary arteries 5 years ago. Old, keeping blood flowing to tissue that wanted to die. And an aortic valve that had been deteriorating for months, narrowing, calcifying, failing to close properly. Old, letting blood leak backward with every heartbeat instead of pushing forward to her body. She needed surgical intervention, and she needed it immediately. Old. The problem wasn't just the VFib. The problem was the failing aortic valve that was preventing effective circulation even if they got her heart beating again. Old, she needed a surgeon's hands, a surgeon's judgment. A surgeon's ability to crack her chest if necessary and manually support her heart while repairing or replacing that valve. The cardiothoracic surgeon on call was Dr. Marcus Chen, and he should have been there in 2 minutes from the first page. It had been 6 minutes. The ER attending physician, Dr. Sarah Vickers, a 15-year veteran who'd run hundreds of codes, knew they were losing this one. "Where is Chen?" she shouted over the controlled chaos, her voice sharp with urgency. Old. "Someone find Dr. Chen now! Why isn't he here?" A nurse ran to the window overlooking the parking garage, looked down, and saw the commotion. A police officer standing over a man on the ground, other hospital staff gathering, security guards gesturing urgently. Stalled, she pressed her face to the glass, trying to understand what she was seeing. Then she recognized the man on the ground, the blue scrubs, the dark hair.
Oh my God.
Old, Chen is in the parking garage. A cop just tased him. Dr. Vickers' face went white, the color draining as she processed what that meant.
What? Get him in here now!
"Oh, radio security! Radio anyone! Call administration!" But the damage was done, the critical window closing. Old, Patricia Moreno had been without effective circulation for 8 minutes. Her brain was dying, neurons shutting down. Old, oxygen-starved cells beginning the irreversible process of death. Her kidneys were shutting down. Her liver was failing. The ER team kept working. Old, kept pushing medications, kept shocking, kept compressing. But without surgical intervention, without Chen's expertise, Old, without someone who could address the underlying structural problem of that failing valve, the outcome was inevitable. At 6:47 p.m., 9 minutes after Dr. Marcus Chen had been tased in the parking garage 200 feet away, Patricia Moreno was pronounced dead. Dr. Vickers called it, her voice flat with exhaustion and grief. Old, time of death 1847. Cause of death, cardiac arrest secondary to aortic valve failure. But the real cause, the preventable cause, was the 60 seconds Dr. Old. Chen spent convulsing on the ground, unable to move, and the 4 minutes he spent handcuffed while trying to explain to Officer Derek Lawson that he was a surgeon responding to save a life. Old. 4 minutes. 4 minutes that Patricia Moreno didn't have. 4 minutes that killed her as surely as if someone had put a gun to her head. Old. The hospital administrator arrived at the parking garage within minutes. Dr. Rebecca Sung, 28 years with Memorial Heights. Old, a former trauma surgeon herself who understood exactly how critical every second was in a code blue situation. She saw Dr. Chen on the ground, still handcuffed. A taser wire trailing from his back. She saw Officer Lawson standing over him. She saw security guards arguing with the officer. And she understood immediately that something catastrophic had just happened. "Uncuff him right now," Dr. Sung said, her voice cold with fury. Lawson turned. "Mom, this man he is Dr. Marcus Chen, one of the finest cardiothoracic surgeons in this hospital. He was responding to a code blue emergency. And you just tased him." Lawson's face went pale. "He's a doctor." Dr. Sung knelt beside Chen, checking his vitals. Her hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent decades in emergency medicine. "Marcus, are you okay? Can you speak?" Chen nodded, his voice hoarse. "Old patient, code blue." "Where's the patient?" Dr. Sung's expression shattered. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. We lost her." Chen closed his eyes. The weight of those words crushed him. "We lost her." Patricia Moreno, a woman he'd never met, a patient he could have saved, was dead because a police officer couldn't process the idea that a black man in surgical scrubs was a surgeon. Dr. Sung stood and faced Lawson, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "Remove those handcuffs immediately." Lawson fumbled with his keys, unlocking the cuffs. Chen stood slowly, his muscles still trembling from the taser's effects. "My pager went off 3 times, Chen said quietly. "I ran to help. I showed him my badge. I told him I was a surgeon. And he tased me." Dr. Sung turned to the security team. "Escort Officer Lawson off hospital property immediately. He is banned from this facility pending investigation." Lawson started to protest. "Mom, I was responding to a call." "You assaulted a physician responding to a medical emergency," Dr. Sung interrupted. "You prevented life, saving care, and a patient died as a direct result. Security, remove him." Now the hospital's chief of security, Vincent Torres, a former Houston police officer himself with 15 years on the force before joining Memorial Heights, stepped forward. "Officer Lawson, you need to come with me." "Give me your badge and weapon," Lawson said, his voice rising. Torres shook his head. "I'm hospital security, not your supervisor, But you're leaving this property immediately, and I'm filing a formal complaint with HPD." Lawson was escorted out. Behind him, Dr. Chen stood in the parking garage, still wearing the scrubs he'd been wearing when he was tased, still holding the ID badge that Officer Lawson had refused to acknowledge. A nurse brought him water. Another surgeon, Dr. Angela Price, arrived and put a hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." Chen didn't respond. He was thinking about Patricia Moreno, about her family, about the surgical intervention he could have provided if he'd been allowed to reach her, about the 9 minutes that had cost her life. Should officers who prevent medical professionals from performing emergency care face criminal charges? Drop your answer below. Within 12 hours, the videos had gone viral. Security camera footage from the parking garage showing Dr. Chen running in full surgical scrubs with his ID badge visible. Lawson stepping into his path, the confrontation, the taser deployment, Chen collapsing. The timestamps were devastating. 6:38 p.m. Chen enters the parking garage. Pim Lawson stops Chen. 6:40 p.m. Lawson deploys taser. 6:44 p.m. Chen remains handcuffed on the ground. 6:47 p.m. Patricia Moreno pronounced dead. 9 minutes. 9 minutes from the moment Chen was stopped to the moment a patient died. The hospital released a statement that was careful, clinical, and utterly damning. On the evening of September 14th, Dr. Marcus Chen, a cardiothoracic surgeon at Memorial Heights Medical Center, was physically prevented from responding to a code blue emergency by Officer Derek Lawson of the Houston Police Department. Dr. Chen, who was on call and responding to a life-threatening cardiac event, was tased and detained while wearing full surgical scrubs and hospital identification. As a direct result of this delay in care, the patient did not receive timely surgical intervention and passed away. We are cooperating fully with all investigations and have banned Officer Lawson from hospital property. The Houston Chronicle ran the headline, "Surgeon tased while responding to emergency, patient dies." The Dallas Morning News, "Black doctor prevented from saving life by officer who didn't believe he was a surgeon." National outlets picked it up within 24 hours. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. The story was everywhere. A surgeon in scrubs tased for running to save a life. The outcry was immediate and intense. The Texas Medical Association issued a statement condemning the incident. The American College of Surgeons called for policy reforms. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability. And Patricia Moreno's family, grief-stricken and furious, wanted answers. The lawsuit was filed within 6 weeks. It named Officer Derek Lawson, HPD Sergeant Michael Brandt for supervisory failure, and the Houston Police Department, The plaintiffs were Dr. Old Marcus Chen and the estate of Patricia Moreno. The claims were extensive and devastating. For Dr. Chen, unlawful detention and excessive force, violation of civil rights under federal law, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, old and violation of professional duties by preventing emergency medical care. For the Moreno estate, wrongful death, negligence, and violation of civil rights. The lawsuit detailed Lawson's history: 14 complaints over 7 years, 12 involving racial profiling or excessive force, 2 sustained reprimands, 0 meaningful consequences. It documented the moment-by-moment timeline. Chen paged at 6:35 p.m. Chen running across the parking garage at 6:38 p.m. Chen, despite visible scrubs and ID badge, at 6:39 p.m. and taser deployed at 6:40 p.m. Moreno pronounced dead at 6:47 p.m. The city's attorneys reviewed the evidence: security footage, hospital records, witness statements from nurses, security guards, and ER staff. Body camera footage from Lawson showing Chen identifying himself as a surgeon, showing his badge, explaining the emergency, and the devastating fact that a patient died while a qualified surgeon was incapacitated 200 feet away. The city settled within 14 months. $47 million to Dr. Marcus Chen, $25 million to the estate of Patricia Moreno. It was one of the largest settlements in Houston history for a case involving police misconduct and wrongful death. Officer Derek Lawson was terminated 8 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final and devastating. Officer Lawson deployed a taser on a physician in full surgical scrubs responding to a medical emergency. Preventing life, saving care, and directly contributing to a patient's death. Despite 14 prior complaints involving racial profiling and excessive force, Officer Lawson continued to demonstrate a pattern of discriminatory and dangerous policing. His employment is terminated immediately, and his peace officer license is revoked. Lawson's name was entered into the National Desertification Index. His law enforcement career was over at 31 years old. Sergeant Michael Brandt, Lawson's supervisor, was demoted and reassigned to administrative duties. The internal investigation found that Brandt had been aware of Lawson's complaint history, but had failed to recommend removal from patrol or additional training beyond the minimum required after sustained complaints. While the Houston Police Department faced unprecedented scrutiny, how had Lawson, with 14 complaints, remained on active patrol? Why hadn't supervisors intervened after the 5th complaint? The 10th. The Department of Justice opened a pattern and practice investigation. Their findings were damning: 14 complaints over 7 years, multiple involving racial profiling in affluent or professional settings. Minimal consequences despite sustained findings, supervisory failures at multiple levels, and a departmental culture that prioritized officer retention over community safety. Should police departments face federal oversight after officers with unplus complaints are allowed to remain on active duty? Let me know in the comments. Dr. Marcus Chen testified at Houston City Council hearings. His testimony was quiet, measured, and devastating. I've been a surgeon for 11 years. I've saved hundreds of lives. That night, I was running to save another one. I was wearing surgical scrubs. I had my hospital ID badge visible. I told Officer Lawson I was a doctor responding to an emergency. He didn't believe me because I'm black. He paused, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what came next. Patricia Moreno died while I was handcuffed on the ground. She had an aortic valve rupture, a condition I've treated successfully dozens of times. I could have stabilized her. I could have given her a chance. But I never got there. Another pause, longer this time. Officer Lawson saw a black man running and decided I was a threat. My scrubs didn't matter. My badge didn't matter. My credentials, my training, my responsibility to save a life. None of it mattered. And Patricia Moreno paid the price. The room was silent. This isn't just about me. This happens to black professionals every day, in hospitals, offices, courtrooms, universities. We're assumed to be threats, criminals, imposters. We're questioned, detained, humiliated, and sometimes, like Patricia Moreno, people die because of it. Chen's final words echoed through the council chambers. If this can happen to a surgeon in scrubs with a hospital badge responding to save a life, what happens to everyone else? This wasn't just excessive force. This wasn't just a wrongful detention. This was a police officer whose bias was so complete, so impenetrable that he deployed a taser on a man wearing surgical scrubs with a hospital ID badge, because he couldn't imagine a black man as a doctor. Old Marcus Chen showed his credentials. He explained the emergency. He was wearing the universal symbol of medical professionals, scrubs, Zold. And none of it mattered because Officer Derek Lawson had already decided who Chen was the moment he saw a black man running. The badge had to be fake. The scrubs had to be stolen. The emergency had to be a lie. That bias didn't just harm Dr. Chen. It killed Patricia Moreno, a 68-year-old woman with a family, a history, a life that could have been saved if a qualified surgeon had been allowed to reach her. This is how systemic racism operates in life, or death situations. It's not always burning crosses or violent rhetoric. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, built on assumptions that seem defensible until examined. It's an officer who sees a black professional and assumes criminality. It's a system that validates those assumptions through inadequate training, toothless oversight, and consequences that never come until someone with resources fights back. And when that bias is backed by the authority to detain, to tase, to physically prevent a doctor from saving a life, it doesn't just send a message. It ends lives. Derek Lawson's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $47 million. That's accountability. HPD is under federal oversight. That's consequence. But money and terminations don't bring Patricia Moreno back. They don't erase the trauma of being tased while trying to save a life. They don't undo the 9 minutes that killed a patient. The real question is what changes now? Do police departments finally remove officers after 5 complaints instead of 14? Do hospitals finally implement protocols to protect medical staff from law enforcement interference during emergencies? Do we finally acknowledge that racial profiling in professional settings doesn't just humiliate, it kills? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Lawson on patrol for 7 years despite 14 complaints, if we don't address the culture that taught him to see a black surgeon as a criminal, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next doctor, the next patient, the next preventable death. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers who physically prevent medical professionals from performing emergency care face mandatory criminal charges and permanent loss of peace officer certification. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the surgeons, the patients, the professionals who deserve to work without being criminalized for their race. This isn't just about one officer, one doctor, or one patient. It's about all of us in the world we're willing to accept.